amplified, so watch your language. Listen, I tried to put my hand up because we've got Tim Taylor on, who's working in minor hockey in the States. Al, the same. And I just wanted to let Al and Tim know that last week there was a Alberta zone camp, which means 6 teams selected, qualified, drafted teams from one half of the province, 3 from the other, 3 from the other. And we're trying to identify people who are going to eventually, in the program of excellence, become national team players. But before that, they have to become a provincial team player. So these are the best of the best at the U15 age group, I believe it was. So, Tim, the dilemma there is, the competition and the striving to be the best you can be, and the ability to make it a positive experience at a camp like that, where there's, sort of a process. Carla and Jordan were official mentors of 2 of the 6 teams. And so we have them on sharing their experience. And Al has commented on not the word mentorship, but he's commented on how they operate there. And I think the big thing is to make it a positive experience for everybody. And in actual fact, you get results. You do win. You will play better. So, Jordan, you've been mentoring the longest in the group, as an active mentor, and you started with boys that were U13, and you moved up to the female side, and so you've worked with many different coaching staffs, and just wanted you to talk about the challenges. Okay, I'm in that leadership role, mentoring, and it's a different hat, as Carla mentioned when I sat with her at the first game I attended in Red Deer. So go ahead, Jordan. I sure appreciate your nuggets.
Well, it was thanks, Wally. It's an interesting thing to mentor. In that, when I first went into it, I was thinking that I'd be helping out a little bit more with the hockey side and the X's and O's side of things. But my first few experiences of it were more in handling and helping to manage the people, and sometimes it was more managing the adults than managing the children that they were the players that they were working with, in trying to deal with the coaching staffs themselves and trying to get them to come together as a group, not just philosophically, but actually physically. Sometimes if they would go poof and scatter to the wind when a game was over, or that, and so those were some of the challenges. Fortunately, this time the coaching staff I was working with was had a little more experience, and philosophically they were really close, and they wanted to share with each other and valued each other's opinions, treated each other as equals in the process, and so then I was able to do more of what I would say your role has been, Wally, with myself as a mentor in asking the questions and asking some of those philosophical questions. And there were some really deep conversations going on to the point where I'd have to remind them of what the time clock was doing in between periods, so that they would be able to actually head back into the dressing room, get kids regrouped and going out. But it's an interesting process with it. I've been fortunate, as you said, to be on both the male and female side. And as the coach mentor, I typically feel that I take away as much from the experiences as they do sometimes. And it creates long-lasting relationships in many cases, where we continue to chat and talk about the things long after the short-term competition is over.
Jordan, Peter Elander's on. Are you in Sweden, Peter?
Yes, I'm in Sweden.
The word mentorship is strange word. And we've dedicated this session to talking about it because both Jordan and Carla were involved in a formal program of excellence under 15 experience in the province of Alberta. So, Peter, I'm curious, how does mentorship fit in terms of vocabulary in Swedish hockey?
I would say giving advice. Ask me if you have any questions. It's like, I think Canada is much more planned program with you have a mentor is going to follow you around, and I've had a mentor in the IHF camps, and I've been a mentor at the IHF camps, and I think North American coaches is more used to it. I think the Europeans is I got the feeling, yeah, but I want to figure it out myself a lot more. I strongly recommend everyone to have a mentor or a sounding board, like I said sometime.
Carla, I've got sitting with you and sitting with Jordan. Jordan's staff that obviously had a lot of experience, and it allowed him to influence, given that the nature of the group and applying what he's learned over many years to work with them. Your staff did not have experience, and I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about that and how to deal with it in moving forward in the same situation should you encounter that.
Yeah, sure. No, I had a young staff, and they had a mentor that had never officially mentored, so we were all in it together and just working our way through it. But I think just to build a little bit on Jordan's points, like building a positive experience. When I was there, I was struggling to define what was meant by that. So to Sammy Joe's questions in the chat, like the dance parties, I just thought deep down it was the idea of building the positive experience was built around everything other than the hockey in a lot of ways. And I'm not sure that's ideal. Just having lived it now, I think we need to, and me, while like I'm not saying we have to sit down there and do 1,000 hours worth of hockey, but I think there's probably a middle ground somewhere where we could do more hockey to better help our coaches and better help the athletes understand what that stream looks like. At the end of the day, you got to be able to do video and details like that. So when building the fun experience, is it a summer camp experience, like where it's just fun and you've gone to a kids camp, or is it is there maybe an angle off of that finds a better balance point? So that's something that's bouncing around in my head, because I think where we're trying to cultivate an experience for the athletes, the coaches are now experiencing the same thing, and nobody's truly maybe understanding the workload and the importance of all the variables when you're in that elite stream. So with my younger staff, they're phenomenal. They were there for the right reasons. They were doing everything that they knew. They were very, very coachable. But it didn't take me long, and we had the conversation with them to realize that we weren't coaching. We were cheering the game, and we were like a player, an extension of the player. So if we scored, we were high, and if we were struggling, we were quiet. And so that was a real great thing to see and talk about, because then we could flush that out and better understand that, okay, essentially we have to counter that, right? Like you got to coach the game. You got to elevate the group if they're down and love them if you need to. So for my young coaches, it wasn't just the art of coaching. It was actually the basics of coaching as well. So it ended up being a really valuable experience for me too. You talk about regression in drills. I was, having regressions in coaching to be, okay, what actually do we do? And how do you teach somebody to do that? So that was maybe one of my biggest challenges, because I didn't want to just tell. And I was asking questions. I was, you tried to explain, but we actually then had a conversation about modeling. Was there an opportunity for us to model as mentors? And so we were given that opportunity. And that was an important piece for my young coaches. So when I said you have to coach the game, you're coaching the kids in front of you about what they're seeing on the ice. I was able to use my voice and help them better understand that. But the experience was invaluable. I just think anytime you get to try to teach your craft, and teach what you do every day, it makes you look at it from a different lens. And then to see the growth within our young coaches, to go to the questioning method in the intermissions, and when they were debriefing the game, really proud of them. They'll learn how to navigate it. It's just a starting point. But I thought a lot of gains were made that way. I just think we need to push the bar in our province to continue to drive home. It's not a cheerleading club. It's a coaching and a hockey experience.
Hi, Hal. Are you hearing us, Al?
I hear you fine, thank you.
Good. I'm glad you got on. Carla Hell is in Minnesota, and he's been doing this as long as anybody. And he's still coaching, I believe, a women's team at a high school. But we're talking about mentorship, and Jordan and Carla have just been through a provincial competition with 8 or 6 zone teams, and we have 6 mentors, 1 assigned to each team. Carl and Jordan were mentoring their own teams, and it was a real good experience for them.
Terrific.
And I think the lessons learned from it are really, really important. So Hal, have you mentored, like officially been hired or brought in to mentor coaches on behalf of an association?
Actually, no, I haven't. I've done it informally, mostly with the young coaches that I've had on staff. And then most of them have gone on to be head coaches somewhere. But in Minnesota, our coaches think they know it all. And so, I see high school coaches getting hired with 1 year of coaching youth hockey. But they did play, and they coach, so the art of coaching, I've written about it. It's a lot more than just running drills, and it's really about how do you manage the people, how do you build the relationships. And I think, as Carla was saying, how do you see the game through the players' eyes and help them see something else. And one of the things that I've learned over the last few years is making sure that I understand what the players want out of the experience, because they, as coaches, we always want to win the state tournament at whatever level we're at. But the kids aren't always dialed into that. I think, of course, coaching girls, they want to have fun first, and they like the social aspect of it, at least in the youth levels. But I did see in a local team that when they had to hire a new coach, and they have this thing where they go through, a lot of these schools will go through, they'll bring 7 or 8 people into the room to interview the coach. Maybe they'll bring the football coach in and the principal, and all these people have no idea what coaching's about or what or hockey's about. Then they all ask one question, and there's no follow-ups. And at the end of it, in this one case locally, the coach said, "Well, I play to win," and they all love that. Everybody loves that idea. I play to win, so that's why he got hired. And it's like, yeah, but I saw him in action last year, and that means is he only plays 10 kids. And I think the parents on the rest of the kids are going to be a little disappointed when they sit on the bench and watch. This is at high school boys level now. And so, I don't know. We don't do a great job mentoring coaches here in Minnesota, I'm afraid to say.
Hal, what I took away from what you said very early is you head coached and you were mentoring your assistants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what you do as a head coach. In some cases, assistants know as much or more than you do. And I look at Peter. He's got Tim Bothell, who's been a head coach on his bench, and somebody else, and now he's got to be able to communicate and draw from their ideas. But as a head coach draw the line of what's acceptable and make the final decisions. The
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Wally, and it's interesting because when I watch a lot of practices, and even with this high school team I was with last year, the head coach, he ran everything. He ran every drill. All we did when we were practicing with them was, basically push cones around or push pucks around. And, my theory is if I have two assistant coaches on the ice, they need to coach. I need to let them coach. And I need to give them an assignment. You're coaching the D, you're coaching this, and I'll just sit and watch, and then I will give them my views, maybe in the locker room afterwards, or kind of tell them philosophically how I think we want to play, and ask them if they can, be a. The risk in all of this is that after a while they think they want your job. And frankly, that's happened to me a couple of times, and whatever. I mean, then you go on. There's never a shortage of places to coach hockey. I can tell you that. So
that's really valid, Carla and Jordan. Why do you think people volunteer to be a head or assistant coach in Hockey Alberta's camps? Any thoughts about why your staff took it on?
I think for my young gals there, like our average age on our staff was about 23. Combined work experience was 4 years. There were 4 coaches. Obviously, COVID factors into that a little bit too. So they were very fresh, and I think they genuinely wanted the experience of coaching more, and having that opportunity. And Hockey Alberta is doing a great job trying to further develop young female coaches to bolster that presence in our province. And I thought all 4 of these women came in genuinely invested in the opportunity. And for that, I'm grateful, because they wanted to have conversations. They wanted to learn. They were excited to try things. So I think their why was really honest, and part of the reason why they impacted our kids then as positively as they did. And sticking to that process. That was another big thing we talked about the whole way, because again, so natural to be tethered to the result. So we were constantly coming back to the process. Or why did you feel nervous in that moment? Oh, we were losing. Okay, good. It's about the result, right? So just those opportunities. So, I think everyone's why is slightly different, but I could say as working with them throughout the 5 days, well, throughout the time leading through it too, or into it, their why was really genuine. They wanted to grow, and they wanted these young players to have a positive experience. So for me, that was what fueled me, because I was excited to work with them then.
you're on mute, Wally.
Jordan, I'm just curious here. Carla's group was there for the right reason, and the relationship that she had with them, that understanding of knowing their why, and they seemed to have a real good perspective on it. They were there to learn. Jordan, over the many years of mentorship that you've done, what would you say about why the people you've worked with, those young assistants, whatever age or whatever experience, why did they do it? In your opinion, did they know their why? Were they there for the right reasons, do you think? Whatever that may be. And Jordan might be out of the office for now. So,
Wally, I think I was really lucky as a coach when I started, because I started at the midget level and went all the way up to junior A. And then I came back down to youth level, and then back up, and then I did some college and in high school. But most coaches work their way up through the youth organizations. And I think that in the postseason types of camps, those opportunities, it's great for them to coach kids that are at a higher level than they've experienced coaching, to see what the game looks like. Like in Minnesota, we have these high performance teams. So they're kids from 9 or 10 or 12 different high schools. So it's the best kids. But in the winter, we don't coach the best kids. We coach the team that we have, which might have one or two of those kids. So to see the game played at a higher level with kids with more experience than the kids you're coaching, and if our job is to prepare players to play at the next level, it helps to know what the next level looks like, and how those kids prepare and how they think about the game, that type of stuff. Then you can bring that down and keep what you're doing in perspective, rather than just win, baby, win. Maybe we need to teach the third line how to skate a little bit better, because they could very well, in 2 years, be a very valuable player on the next level up. So I think that's a benefit. I'm not sure that the coaches show up with that in mind, but and then of course it's the highly coveted HP jacket with the logo on it that, that everybody wants to wear in the off season.
Wally, I think Carla had a couple of things that I want to comment on. To get these young coaches to do the legwork and spend the hours on the ice and the games, that to have a bigger sample size before you know the game and stick to what you're doing instead of just being a cheerleader, like a little older than the players. I think the mentoring has to point out, what is this game about? There are some really fun things. I have a young coach there. Yep, I asked, what do you want to do? I want to coach the power play and then offensive faceoffs. Okay, you can do that, but there are other aspects of the game that is not so maybe the fun part, and you have to be able to do that too. And then also, when I was in North Dakota, where we went for an assistant coaches, there were so many young coaches who said, I can learn so much from you, but when you come to that high level, no, you're gonna teach us some things, and you're gonna teach the players. So to do the legwork, to be prepared to be a professional coach, is not done in 3 years and you played a couple of years yourself. It's like a 10 to 50 years process before you start knowing this, a little of the things you should know. And it's maybe 30 years before you're fully learned, and hope the memory don't slip while you're getting too old, like mine.
And I would agree, Peter. And I think, one of the challenges is, this was a really small snippet, and my line I used the entire duration was, they don't know what they don't know. So you talk about doing the prep work and stuff. They don't quite know what they're supposed to be looking for or doing. So one of the recommendations we put forward as a mentor group to Hockey Alberta is, maybe from this event, we figure out who are the 4 or 5 coaches that, are really sinking their teeth into it and have the opportunity to grow. Can they align with U Sport or ACAC coaches or the mentors that were there, but can we maintain the mentorship throughout the season? Because that's really, you need that time for them to understand what you're dealing with throughout a season and how do you deal with all of it. Short term's kind of glorified in a lot of ways. It's expedited in a lot of ways, so it's a roller coaster. But you can gloss over a lot because the end of the event's there before you blink. So I think that's just laying that foundation. But they don't know what they don't know is the biggest thing that I kept coming back to. And so just trying to inform them of, have you thought of this? Have you considered that? That was kind of the biggest thing. And they definitely came away with more. But I think there's that next step is wholeheartedly investing them as young coaches as they work through their seasons now. And in a perfect world, you get them as assistant coach, I think, but sometimes those aren't the options or it's not available. So just trying to provide support.
I have one recommendation when you mentor, and I'm telling all my young coaches, you have to study the game. You have to go and watch hockey games. You have to have even if it goes to your wallet, you have to pace. You have those NHL games. You have to watch the Swedish. You have to watch a lot of hockey to understand it. You need to listen on podcasts, and you have to follow the think tank. You have to educate yourself. I have an 18-year-old who could go to university and study dinosaurs because he spent probably 20,000 hours in the age between 4 to 15 on doing dinosaur things. And if you want to be a really good hockey coach, you have to spend the hours. It's a complicated game, and it's not going to be easier. You have to do the legwork as a coach on the ice and as to study to understand what's happening here. And I think this younger generation, it's a lot of work. So you should find the 5 best who is ready to log the hours, because they're going to be the best coaches in the end.
Carla, you told me the story of being on the bench and at the end of the game where you were more active and mentoring them actively. I think that connects here with Peter's just said. I wonder if you could share that story.
Well, I've got the same problem as Peter. I can't remember everything I've said. So if I've forgotten the story, Wally, backfill it for me, please.
Okay.
But yeah, as alluding to it there, my last conversation was, trying to model what do we need, and and it comes so naturally, I guess, to a lot of us that have been around the game for as long, and your personality factors. And I was saying in the chat to Sammy, that was one of my big challenges as a mentor, to not project my personality style onto the coaches. They don't have to do what I do, but just trying to get them to think of things of what they could do within their own realm. But yeah, we were just struggling on the bench a little bit uncomfortable, weren't quite sure. Really good at giving individual feedback, trying hard that way. But just again, bringing that presence that coaches can bring, and how you can impact a game with your presence, not yelling and screaming, but coaching a game, teaching the coaches and the players how to see the game. What are we celebrating? Was it the angle to contact? Was it the stick lift? Like, what were the variables we were looking for? And then just using our presence and our voice and our energy to get them excited about those things. And, subtle little corrections on the bench. Oh, we flew by there, right? We got to make contact. We've talked about that. So just hopefully showing them how to just engage your group throughout to like, those are the most teachable moments. If you sit quiet in a game, you've lost a good opportunity to help those young athletes grow, especially in short term, because they're coming from different lenses. So trying to get them on the same page as quick as you can. But yeah, again, just understanding, as to Peter's point, like what it takes. So what was really cool was we had this goal going into our 4th game of, hey, we're going to counter the energy on our bench. If they're high, we're going to make sure they're ready for the next shift. If they're low, we're going to lift them up. And it was cute because after the game, I said to them, I was debriefed. I said, well, how did that one feel? And they said, we are exhausted. And I said, congratulations, you've coached your first game. So I said, the muscle memory will come along with that as you continue to do it. But that was their first time they were wholeheartedly engaged in a game, trying to feel what their team needed. And that was a pretty cool thing to hear and have them experience. So, that again, those are just the little things you try to help them with, so they go back to their club teams next year. Hopefully they've got a little more confidence in that realm.
That modeling suggestion that you had, Carla, I thought that was a great one. In that, of course, one of the things I struggle with as being the mentor on the bench is not being the coach on the bench. And because you see those things, and so then you're writing down, making notes, trying to, so you can recall later, did you see such and such a thing, or and some of those pieces. But I really like that idea of the modeling piece, especially for the person even with my crew who are experienced, doing it earlier on. And then the other one was, it made me reflect back to the tryout camp. And when we're thinking about, everybody's so busy evaluating players, rather than, that would have been a great time to be on the bench with yourself, or well, in some cases myself, to see that modeling piece, because you and I briefly chatted about that there, that it was very eventful being on the bench together there, and just experiencing those kids. And I know for myself, like we were joking around, that Wally being at the event was that the mentor of the mentors was there. Well, that was for myself when we were at that camp, because I was getting to see a little more insight into how you coach, and I know, and I'm sure probably the other way around a little bit too, and how you interact with the athletes, and that piece. And so that was just a natural, I think, with adding that modeling once you get to competition too.
Call it. That was really glad to say. Your coaches said they were totally drained after one full game. And in this coaching profession, if you go to the big tournaments, you're going to coach. You coach the game who ends at 10 o'clock, and you have to do a video. You have to prepare because you're going to play 3 o'clock the next day. And being at a lot of those big events, you're drained for a month. You're so tired, you shouldn't do anything. So to point that out for young coaches, it's not just one game, because you have one game tomorrow morning. You have to be just as good.
And that was a great point, Peter. And that's what we brought up to Hockey Alberta as well, is they didn't give us access to video. Like it was, we could have purchased it with an online, but they didn't provide video. And I was, you think again about coaching and preparing for that next day. Like you're right. You're up till 2 a.m. working on that video to show. So they just had a snippet that's like one piece of what coaching is, just the on the bench piece. But, in that short term, at least there was some gains made there. But I wholeheartedly agree, Peter. Like, the volume, and the one thing I said to the group early on was anything we do with this team, anything has to come from our brains and has to be facilitated by us. And I think that was a little bit overwhelming for them to understand that, because they're like, yeah, we'd love to have, our green signs in our room. I was like, well, we'd all love it. Who's going to do it? And I think that was another piece of just, right. Nothing just happens. It's all cultivated from us as a group, as a staff. So, those were the variables that I thought were interesting, and hopefully, they walked away a little bit better tool set than they came in with, a little better understanding.
I think really good your point, because it's a do or do not. Like if you want to be that coach who's going to have this profession, get paid to do it, you have to make a decision. This is what I'm going to do. And it's not the 40-hour work week. It's 80 hours, 20 hours. It's also your social life. You need to have a social life, but it's not the normal social life. It's based on what you're doing.
Just something I wanted to add, mentoring in communities, AA, AAA, there are 4 quadrants, and I've worked with 2 different associations. And I evaluate for Hockey Alberta the HP1 program. So my biggest concern, being on the bench for a period and just watching, and you can see it in 5 minutes and possibly 3 shifts. Can the coach see the game? Are they able to point out the most important things that are happening and respond to them? Do they see the game? And I've worked with Jordan many years ago when he was working with the Bantam team, and he saw the game and he communicated really well. So it wasn't, but I'm finding there are some coaches, and they may be assistants on the bench, that don't see the game, so they don't know what to say and how to say it. So there's an awful lot of learning to understand the game and the nuances and the cardinals of playing the game the right way, and reinforcing that by identifying positive, specific performance as a coach versus screaming and yelling and getting frustrated. So I just wanted to share that. And Jordan, over the many years that you've done it with Hockey Alberta, how did, in terms of the ability to see the game, how would you say the different staffs you've worked with over the years might have been?
Well, that's an interesting question, Wally, because each of the staffs that I've worked with have been totally different. In that we've had people, one assistant coach that had over 900 games in the NHL on the bench, to people who are just stepping out of hockey themselves, playing at the elite level, not much higher than the kids themselves, to a video coach that had never even spent time on a bench. So it's all different people. But yeah, I've had the experience that you've said as well, Wally, where some see the game very well. You can tell by the comments that they're making to the kids. And then you've had some that they may as well be sitting in the stands with the parents, because they're basically a spectator, and they're just emotionally on in the game, up and down what's happening. it's not necessarily one world, but it's, I think that, again, using the questioning piece with them and helping them see the game a little better, that like Carla mentioned, it's hard work and they will get there with time, but they have to put in that time, effort, and energy. And whether it's watching a lot of hockey, you know, when you say I see the game, well, I say that that's because I wasn't that good of a player, and to get to the levels that I played at, I had to be a student of the game and had to know what everyone on the ice had to do, because if one of my line mates screwed up, I had to be able to cover for them so we didn't get scored on, so I could see another shift. So that's those pieces. But with these competitions and that, it's helping people see the game and that. So, and you've said a lot when you say that it's about providing that reinforcement to the kids, whether it's positive specific or whether it's corrective. But that's what the majority of it is about through the short-term competition, is helping them be able to get to that point as well. But one other thing, just a side note that Carla had mentioned in earlier, and you piqued my memory with it there, was, and I know we've had this conversation many times about how players are evolving. Well, coaches are evolving too in their needs, and we have to also understand. I'm right now in the hiring process of new teachers for next school year, and it's one of those things that we have to be aware of their needs as we're hiring them, and so we know we can support them, and that piece. So that's the piece with coaches. We talk about all of the needs growth-wise, and this mentorship piece is such a huge one. And what Carla had mentioned about keeping it going longer than the short-term competition, I think is really key. And well, I know that you've been a formal, informal mentor of mine for a lot of years, Wally, and it's finding that person that fits for you. And it's not necessarily the person that always agrees with everything you say, but sometimes it's that person asking the tough questions and holding up a mirror every once in a while for you to be able to slap yourself in the forehead and go, what the heck was I thinking? But that's what it's about, and it's a growth. And the other piece that we were chatting about that we're seeing with players, and it's also with coaches as well, and well, with my teachers, we were talking about it before, and in self-care and mental health support. And we've gone from a generation of rub some dirt on it, keep going, or it's a long way from your heart. But it's one of those things that we have to be aware of and supporting one another, because we know better, we have to do better, and that's pretty important, pretty key when dealing with the adults and youth. So I'll stop talking now and let somebody else chat.
Go ahead.
So Jordan, it's interesting that you say that I have to really study and learn the game and doing that. My wife is Canadian. She never played hockey, late maybe, but she was a figure skater. And she said one day, hockey is so random. It's so random. You don't know what's going to happen. I said, no, it's not random. There's patterns. If they go down there, of course, the puck is going to go there. So she said, no, it's random. So I said, you sit beside me and we would just watch a game like a school class, like 1 hour. And we just see, what do you see? And I see this is going to happen. I look around the corners. And she said, that hour just sitting and watching the game, not cheering for a team or like being a bench, of just see how the game developed, opened her eyes that, now it's like almost you go into a math test, you don't have a formula book with you. And the next time you get the formula book and it's, yeah, that's not so hard. So I think that we can mentor our coaches, not just being on the bench, but sit beside them. And you and I are going to watch for an hour here. Then we take a cup of coffee and just see, what do you see? And I see a little more because I have my 62 years of background and I'm not 22. I've done it with some of my young coaches, and it's a great advice. Maybe they get conflicted with what you see a lot in that's what they're gonna look for. You're looking for nice passes and play patterns, and another guy would look for the big hits. But it's a good way to get them to watch more hockey in an educational way and not just being a cheerleader. And it's not a random game. Everything is set up almost. 90% is going. You know what's going to happen if you can look around corners, and you're good.
Great, Peter. I'm just holding up this book Syl Corbett wrote, because yesterday when I was sitting in line for my blood test, I had this book and I purchased it for all of my family members. It's just a classic book. And I turned to this chapter on mentorship. It's not a chapter, it's just that one page. And I think the bottom line to mentorship is, like Carla said, they don't know what they don't know. And do they want to learn? How can we inspire them, their curiosity to learn? And she writes about the importance of this and the fact that the experience that we all have that they may not have is something that they can gain from. Now, it works at Hockey Alberta events. I'm not so sure it works on an ongoing basis when it's prescribed, when associations hire a mentor. At least that's my experience. And I was hoping that some of you would have gone through that mentorship experience, you know, formal hired, you're there to help, I shouldn't say change the world, but influence the way coaches coach. But I found it to be extremely difficult at the community level when it's assigned. When it occurs organically, like Helen alluded to, his assistants, he was mentoring them. When it occurs at Hockey Alberta, it's an approved, prescribed, formal way, which is received well. I believe that the mentor is just got a lot to offer, and how are we able to share that? How are we able to get it across in a better way? Because some mentors maybe didn't really treat their players very well, even at the Hockey Alberta competition, just by not playing them when they shorten the bench. And I think that there's sort of cardinals in mentorship, and with Hockey Alberta, one of the cardinals is you play everybody in all situations. And if that doesn't occur at those things, that's a cardinal that needs to be addressed. I watched one team do a dryland walkthrough outside before their third game of D-zone cover. And the question I had, wearing my experience hat, was, is this the right time and the right stuff and the right amount of the right stuff, right amount, and the right time to do that? And I think those are the areas as a mentor that you want to be comfortable with recognizing, addressing, asking questions about. And Carla, you do a tremendous job on the questioning piece. And is there a better way to do that, or what would you do differently? So I think everybody on here plays a leadership role wherever they live, and you're mentoring every day. And one of the things that Syl in her book alludes to is that you learn as much from the experience as the person being mentored. Probably more, because you're more open to learning. And I'm sure there's a stage at which you think you go in and you know it all and you've got to do this. But the art of mentoring is the same as the art of coaching, and learning to ask questions and the right stuff, the right amount, the right time. It's the same with mentoring, and hopefully it can make a big difference down the road. So now I talked to Syl Corbett, and she did I don't think you were on, Tim or Hal, but she did a presentation on this book that I held up in front of you. And Dr. Corbett has just a brilliant person, a former Olympic athlete. I'm not sure whether she was a distance runner or a cyclist, but she has a doctoral degree in neuroscience. And this book is such a great read. She does her artwork. She's an artist, and every chapter has a work of her art as a title to the chapter, and they're all very humorous related to the particular chapter. So the one she did on mentorship, and Carla, maybe you can help me on this. It's called No Small Potato. I'm not sure what that means related to mentorship. And I guess it's a big job. How do you take that artwork, Carla?
I don't know. I don't know, Wally.
Well, I'm going to have to ask her, but when I spoke to her yesterday, I called her because I knew we were going to try to spend time on it this weekend. And I said, you could write a book on it. And she said, probably. This book, incidentally, is 76 pages of the actual chapters, very short chapters, and 56 pages, just a list of all the resources, the references that she used. So it's really a great read, and hopefully she'll be able to come on with us. And takeaways moving forward. Peter, I think we're always mentoring whether we are officially or not. It's just sort of an osmosis process that occurs when two people talk together and exchange ideas. But is there anything that any of you can offer and share from all of your experiences to people who are want to become better coaches and maybe be more open to learning? Go ahead.
I have one quote that I use a lot. It's nice to be important, but more important to be nice. That means that as a head coach, you're the most important person, but you have to have a staff and players that believe in you, trust in you. And the only way that they can do that is that you believe in them. And
You hit mute there, Peter.
Peter, I don't know if your sound's working. Can anybody hear Peter? No? Peter, we're not hearing you. So can you hear us? I might have to text him. His head's moving around, but I'm not hearing him. So I'm just going to type him a quick chat and say, Peter, can't hear you.
Wally, I have to jump off here. So gentlemen, thanks for the conversation. Always enjoy it and look forward to the next one. So thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Carl.
Well, we've lost Peter, but I'm sure if we can get him to get on again, I'll get him to repeat what he said. So,
Well, one of the things, Wally, I was just going to comment on was you were talking about the community association mentorship versus short-term competition or the prescribed piece.
Yeah.
What I've found in having someone prescribed to me as part of an association, it was kind of like and I know that this isn't something that any of us want to talk about, but the inoculation approach, vaccination, one shot. It seems like you had 1 or 2 or 3 shots through the season where a person was coming out to work with you. as opposed to informal mentorship where you found somebody that is a fit for you, and somebody that you can call to be that sounding board, somebody that you can engage in coming to be a part of your program. And I find that that there's learning in both, but the learning in the prescribed model of one with an association just seems like it's a little disjointed. Sometimes it's on the agenda or time frame of the mentor rather than you, whereas when you have an informal mentor or somebody that you've selected yourself, that it always seems like it's ongoing and it's what you need at that time. So.
Jordan, if you ask, I'm approaching the association to possibly mentor 3 coaching staff. And I think in terms of your suggestion, I might ask them, who would they want to mentor them? Who do they know that they trust and respect enough to engage in helping them become better coaches? And that's a good thought. I think they already trust people. They confide in them and believe in them. So they're likely going to listen to them and apply what's shared and exchanged. And that may be something that just dawned on me when you mentioned it, that you're hiring a mentor. Please find one that suits you, your needs and personality. And it's sort of an expectation of the organization that you reach out and continue a relationship that will be ongoing for for all the time that you coach. You'll establish a trust, respect, and friendship, much like the relationship we've developed, Jordan. And obviously, when we began, I believe you were coaching the Rural AAA team, and Bobby Joe was Sluicer was involved, and that helped bridge the gap of communication because I wasn't a total stranger. And Bobby Joe trusted and respected me, but over time, our relationship really improved. I similarly have mentored Tom Malloy officially, and my role primarily was to protect Tom and Jordan from the outside musings that were going on, the criticisms that were just not valid, and protecting the coach so they could enjoy the process. So I really believe, Jordan, that idea of, find your own mentor, I think is a good idea. I wonder if it's possible. Tim, do you have a mentor? Tim Taylor.
No.
Okay, is there anyone you would find if you were asked to find one for yourself?
You mean here locally?
Yes, somebody that's realistically you could connect with, converse with.
Yeah, there isn't a name that's popping into my head right now, but there's some good hockey people around, so I'm sure that there is.
And I guess that's the point of my question is, and I don't know, Hal, are you still on? See, I think when I began coaching, I assisted Dave King with the national team as a head coach, and I considered him my mentor. I didn't say that, I was just his assistant coach, but I just took such a value out of what he did that, boy, it became a part of how I coached. And at Hockey Alberta, at the Program of Excellence camps, the way they ran before, Claire Drake and George Kingston, I regard as highly respected people in the game. And I was fortunate enough to be involved at that level, working with them. And so I called them mentors. And they're the kind of people that I could phone and did phone. And I didn't call and phone them for advice. I often called and phoned them just to talk hockey. And that's mentorship. So, well, listen, I have got a doctor's appointment this morning with the cardiologist. So I've got to make my way down to Foothills Hospital here shortly. So I want to thank you all for coming on. And I'm hoping to arrange to have Dr. Sil Corbett with a degree in neuroscience talking about mentorship and its importance and possibly how to make it more possible, more viable. So long to everybody. I'm going to shut off the recording with the shortest session I've ever had, but that's okay. And we'll stay in touch for next week. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
See you, Lloyd.